Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to dig into the documents that literally build our government, constitutions. But we're not just looking at the famous one. We're pitting the U.S. Constitution against Ohio's Constitution to see how these two blueprints for democracy are alike, but also, well, really different.
So let's just jump right in with a huge question. Where does your vote pack the biggest punch? Is it at the state level or the federal level? Now, you might have a gut reaction to that, but the real answer? It's kind of complicated, and it all comes down to the way these documents were designed from the very beginning.
All right, so before we get into what makes them different, we've got to talk about what makes them the same. You can think of the U.S. Constitution as like the master blueprint for American democracy. It was the foundational plan that a lot of states, including Ohio, used as their starting point.
At their core, they're built from the same stuff, right? They both set up 3 branches of government, with the whole checks and balances thing, to make sure nobody gets too powerful. They both have a Bill of Rights to protect our individual freedoms. And of course, they're both founded on that big idea of popular sovereignty, that all the power ultimately comes from us, the people, and we express that power through elections.
So you see, we're not talking about 2 totally separate planets here. It's more like one original plan that later got a major custom renovation. So let's dive into how Ohio took that plan and really made it its own.
Okay, so how did Ohio put its own spin on that national blueprint? Well, they made some really interesting tweaks. We're going to look at 3 of the biggest ways Ohio's government was built totally differently. First up, making the laws. So at the federal level, it's what you probably think of, a representative system. We vote for people, they go to D.C., and they vote on laws for us. Simple enough. But Ohio does things a little differently. Here, citizens have way more direct power. Through things called initiatives and referendums, Ohioans can actually go around the legislature and vote directly on the laws. That is a huge tool for direct democracy. All right, next up, let's talk judges. Think about federal judges, like Supreme Court justices. They're appointed by the president, and they serve for life. The idea is to keep them out of the political fray. But Ohio? Nope, they went a completely different way. Here, judges at every single level are elected by the people for set terms, which makes them directly accountable to you, the voter who puts them there. And here's the third big one, term limits. You know how in the U.S. Congress, a senator or a representative can basically get reelected forever? Well, that's not how it works in Ohio. State lawmakers here are term limited. That means they can only serve for a certain number of years and then they're out. The whole point is to keep bringing in fresh blood and new ideas into the legislature.
So you're probably asking, why all these changes? Well, it turns out Ohio's first constitution from 1802, it had some major issues. By the middle of the 19th century, things were getting messy. The government was barely functioning. It was definitely time for a complete overhaul.
Yeah, think of it like one of those home makeover shows. The original foundation from 1802, it was crumbling. The state was drowning in debt. The courts were totally backed up. It was a disaster. The solution? They called the Constitutional Convention of 1851. They basically tore the old blueprint up and drafted a new one with some critical upgrades to fix all the problems. So what exactly did they fix in this big renovation? Well, for starters, they made it so major executive officials and all judges had to be elected. That's a huge shift in accountability right there. They also created a whole new level of district courts to clear out that massive backlog of cases. And maybe, most important of all, they put super strict limits on how much debt the state could take on. That really put Ohio back on solid financial footing. Okay, so after that massive 19th century renovation, what we're left with are 2 very different designs for how a government should run. So let's put them side by side one last time, just to make it crystal clear.
Yeah, when you see it all laid out like this, the different philosophies really pop. The U.S. Constitution is that classic original blueprint, right? It's all about representative democracy, appointed judges, no term limits. But Ohio's Constitution, that's the custom built. It deliberately mixes in elements of direct democracy, makes sure the judiciary is elected, and puts term limits on its lawmakers. 2 very different approaches.
Okay, so what? Why does any of this blueprint talk matter? What's the real-world impact of all these constitutional details on you as a citizen?
When you boil it all down, it's this. Ohio's custom-built constitution is specifically designed to put more power, more control directly into the hands of its citizens.
I mean, from voting on laws yourself to picking the judges who interpret them, the whole system in Ohio is built around direct popular control in a way the federal system just isn't.
And that really brings us full circle, back to a huge fundamental question for any democracy. Where should the power truly lie? Should it be with the people directly, or with the representatives they choose to elect? The U.S. and Ohio constitutions give us two different answers to that question. And you know, there's no single right way, but understanding the different blueprints, that's how you decide for yourself where you stand.